Episode 296. We've got some games. We've got some news, some of which we will be talking about tomorrow. So if you're here for the PvE roundtable, you're going to have to wait. We do have that scheduled, so stay tuned for that. But if you're interested in some talk about what the Shock are up to, why are they so poop? How are their Infernal doing so well? What's up with that? And God forbid the NA teams actually win. Who might actually win? You stay tuned for that. But that being said, Yiska, what are we up to? What's good? How are we feeling?
Yeah, of course. A little disappointed by this week. As we will find out, I think I would have already been disappointed by before the PvE announcement.
Sure.
Which we'll get to eventually, but yeah, I'm mainly about the state of the league and how it expresses itself and the symptoms that we're now feeling and resulting in maybe the lowest point in Overwatch League history in terms of confidence in the product. So yeah, not too well.
No. Yeah, I feel that entirely. Yeah, we will definitely get into the utmost reapage. I feel like we are reaping a lot of the problems that I think we've been talking about for I'm gonna say 6 years. I think you have probably championed some of the bigger ones, but yeah, we've been chatting some stuff about the problems with this league, and yeah, it's reaping time. Yeah, and then the whole PvE stuff is definitely a good old cherry on top of a crap sandwich, to put it lightly. But yeah, it's certainly been a week. It has been a week, and my therapist is just gonna have to hear about it. But as we get into these topics, we do obviously have to give a shout out to those who support the show and make this possible. So episode 296 is brought to you by Battle Crab, Refine Bean, Brunsma Buha, Picasso, Chris R34444, Gasha67, Lotion, Porkchop Sammy, Rex Zane, Volamel, and Sugar High, and our YouTube members, I am DRW, Brother Adam L, Sagi Fumi, Ice Am Jello, Fire Element 6, AK, and Chris R. What a week. What a tumultuous, crazy, kind of upsetting week. It is I think the more that Yiska talks about the lowest end of the product, the more that my brain goes back to those last week games, and I'm just like, bro, what a world do we live in that a team as stacked as the San Francisco Shockers performing as poorly as they are. It is just it doesn't seem possible. It seems so ass backwards to me.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not taking prisoners today, Joe. I'll tell you straight up, Proper is still the best player in the league, bar none. Still a tier break between him and everyone else. If you actually look at representative stats and have semi-educated or have people with educated opinions talk about them, it's not close. This guy doesn't die. He doesn't die early. He doesn't die within the first 3 people that fall. He has the highest damage output at the same time, while his team is one of the slowest to take fights. He has, I think, paired or second most highest first kill among the elite traces. I think only Alpha is higher. And I'm fairly confident, even though we don't have official stats about that he doesn't really receive whatever resources one perceives him to get. Resources as expressed are admittedly more than just healing numbers. It's also attention and space creation to facilitating goals that work towards him. Those are super hard to quantify via stats, right?
Sure, of course.
Rest assured, in everything that is semi-tangible and also in the opinion expressed by others, Just about the only thing you can say about what's weird about Proper right now is the wild switching of heroes and like not really crystallizing into one complete role as to allow maybe his DPS partner to be a mortal human being and grind into a role and perfect that, because he's just capable of being unreal on every DPS pick that he chooses. He dragged a really underperforming San Francisco Shock to a reverse sweep.
A reverse sweep of the New York Excelsior. That's where we're at. It is week 3, and the San Francisco Shock, a team that we were all betting would just win the league, it wasn't close. It was first or nothing, is game 5 with New York.
Yes. And
that's where we're at.
And I think we're at a point. It's okay. There's several trends that one can feasibly argue here that I play. If you have some pattern recognition, you will realize that like someone is just about the only Korean tank rookie that came into the league that had any good performance in his rookie year.
Yep.
Mac sucked. Kellen sucked. Max Janbin
suck.
They're not outside that range yet. Let me tell you that.
Yep. Hey, granted, it's week 3. I'm willing to, I think there's room for them to improve this season, but let's call a spade a spade. What I've seen thus far from these 2 kids in week 1 and week 3, it wasn't great.
Yeah,
I've got one of them hitting their head on the top of walls with Winston. They're swapping Zarya in real odd positions. They're just kind of absent on the point. They're just kind of rotating in and out. Again, seemingly kind of at random. It just doesn't. None of this makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, there's just a lack of being on the same page. And once again, like here, I feel like you could be saying like, okay, whatever pattern we recognize in main tanks is taking hold. Maybe it's also about a lot of players living in North America for the first time and whatnot. Some of them are in their rookie years, or half of them are in their rookie years. That's a question mark. That's all plausible, and I'm sure that has something to do with it, but there's also the unknown situation around their living situation. I actually haven't updated myself if they're still in a less permanent situation than they were previously. But all of this, like the late fly-in and then into hotel life, and I think they had it on Twitter that they were only practicing at an internet cafe. I'm not sure if that's still the case. My last update was that they at least don't have PCs on their hotel suites, as you might imagine. Like a lot of players just derive their quality from their endless grind, right?
Of course, yeah.
That's true in all of esports. If Simple doesn't grind simple hours, he's not simple. Yeah. And there's very few players in the Overwatch League historically who are set to get away with very little hours of personal practice. Most of them need a silly amount of grind. The best players in the league are known for the silly amount of grind, right? After hours, long hours of practice. If you can't do this, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, I'm not sure if they are allowed to just chill out 24/7 as they like in their practice area. Maybe that's the case. But something feels like beyond the other pattern recognition and empirical evidence or trends that we have, in terms of, rookies, first time in NA, Korean main tank rookies needing more experience playing NA metas is the other pattern that we observe. If I feel like this is not enough to describe why a team as talented as the San Francisco Shock is currently battling tooth and nail against one of the bottom tier teams. It is that there is something intangible. Maybe the living situation has something to do with it. Maybe there are other reasons. Something is in the ether here that Other you would like if this happened to another team, we would be quick to question the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a coaching staff where
it's hard to really draw.
We have
too much ire.
If people deserve the benefit of the doubt, it's this coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
So something is going on there, and it's sad to see because I'm a silly post Joe, but I think this is the only team that feasibly can be expected to get to the level of Atlanta Reign at any point in this season.
Oh,
maybe the Outlaws, but this is their meta, and it's that 3-1 wasn't super close.
No, it wasn't super close, and that's maybe where I draw a line of distinction, and I think this does tie to the Shock in some facets. So let me jump in here. I think I agree that the coaching staff for the San Francisco Shock probably deserve way more benefit of the doubt than I think the community is probably giving them. I have not seen too much like directed their way, but I can only assume that it's Krusty is washed and Krusty this, and nobody remembers about 9K anyways. So he probably gets to skate by this underperformance, let's call it, pretty carefree. But I do think there is a pattern that you can recognize when it comes to Krusty's coaching throughout the time that he has been with the San Francisco Shock. They are bad at reading metas. Period. The end. It is not surprising to me that I can go into every week in a new stage and just kind of guesstimate that the San Francisco Shock are either going to lose their opening game or it is going to be painfully close when it really shouldn't be. Now, pin that, keep that in the back of your mind. Another thing that we saw this week in particular, and it was pretty apparent to me from, I think it was the London game. London, Vegas, and we'll get to them. And then obviously kind of replicating itself again with Valiant in Florida as well. The meta there is an internal pocket in NA kind of shifting away from Monkey, and there is more Ramatra. There is like this comfort when it comes to Ramatra, a lot of Diva. Maybe, Sigma seems more of like an off pick, but even some Queen, even Junker Queen kind of coming in, obviously not playing on the live patch that is currently on Overwatch 2. But Junker Queen still is seeing some play. It does feel like there is this almost, I'm going to guesstimate half of NA that is playing almost void of Winston. And there's this other half that is still running with Winston is the predominant meta composition. It is standard. If you can't play it, you're cheesing, right? And the pro player mind. There is this divide. And it feels like San Francisco is late to the party when it comes to that divide, and they're having to relearn the meta all over again. So this is technically in Krusty brain, in Shock brain, this is just week 1 all over again. So it doesn't shock me. On top of the living situations, all this stuff. And yes, any kind of like any fan out there is listening to me and there's like, oh yeah, cope. No. I'm not coping. I'm trying to explain how this could be this bad, right? This is a poop team. It is frustrating to watch them barely get across the line, and Kellen have to gift them a Rialto C9 missed shatter to see them actually cap. Or I think it was Havana, if memory serves. It was a magical, all right, guys, here it comes. If it happens, it's gonna happen now. Like it come on, right? This isn't cope. It is going to take a Herculean effort from one of the best players in Overwatch history to lift this team back into relevance, because as it stands right now, it's dire. It is dire, and it's not surprising to me, to kind of circle back to your point about having kind of a stinky locker room. Yeah, that doesn't shock me when you have Finn last year looking quite promising. You have Vindame coming in from, I believe, Seoul, if memory serves, being kind of like a standout main support to this team that they look so much worse, so much terribly worse. None of this makes sense. And I think I've been very consistent on this show, if it doesn't make sense and the skill of these players that I think we can all say is there, I don't think I enough like APAC and Korean experts praise Max and Junbin, and I've heard Vindame's name thrown around enough to support my own kind of eye test as well, that I'm like, no, these guys are talented. It is not coming through in the gameplay. There has to be external reasons, right? There is reasons to explain this, ones that it's probably not worth speculating on, but I mean, it's a podcast, so I'm going to wildly speculate. Yeah, it does feel like a lost locker room, and I have to imagine that coaching a lost locker room is really, really tough. Is it necessarily their fault? Is it a logistics thing? Is it a meta thing that Krusty's kind of, I hate to get flowery with this, but like, he's not somebody who I've ever thought was a great creative mind. He's a refinement mind. You know, I would trust Rush with trying to figure out a way to make Dallas good. Shocker, that's also not happening in APAC. But it just doesn't, there's a lot going on, it feels like, for Shock, and it's very obvious when it comes to their gameplay, because this is very piss poor.
What do you think about the fan pattern recognition that Shock starts out not very successful in season 1, pick up Violet, win 2, 4th, so.
Yeah.
5th final. Violet leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Team not great. But Violet's team, pretty pog.
Pretty good. I think my opinion on Violet was pretty established when we saw him roll out on Cassidy on that Gibraltar, if that rings a bell with anybody. Where they had a DP. I think this was season 4, if memory serves. Pretty early on in the season, they've got Violet playing DPS for some ungodly reason. That to me screamed, okay, this kid is vital to the internal communication structure and like just overall confidence of this squad. And if they can play him, they will. We know he's talented. We know that, a lot of these pros have like off accounts and they can play, off role, whatever. It is a little cap. It is a little troll. But if it is that important to you that one of the best teams in the world is going to at least try to field him in an off role to maintain some of that intangibility, maybe there's something to that. That's kind of where my mind kind of sits with that. Do I think that the Shock are doomed because they don't have Violet? Absolutely not. Do I wonder, how this communication structure is being led now? Whose responsibility is that? Is Proper somebody who talks a lot? I don't know. We have a pretty consistent history, and I think any kind of esport that high mechanically intensive roles tend to either err on unicorns who can both be world beaters and communicate fine, and the other half seem to be completely mute and have a hard time even communicating simple things because their bandwidth is completely on the inner minutia of the game. So I do have to wonder how much he contributes. I mean, I agree. I've seen those stats. We gotta send some love to Baroy for bringing back Winston's Lab and showcasing some of these stats, because yeah, it's not close. That's maybe the transmutation I can take away from the community aspect, where it's like, oh, well, Violet's not here, I guess Shock don't win. It's like, okay, well, are we saying that Violet is too good not to have? I do think he's very talented. I do think he's maybe, MVP caliber, but I think skill wise, I think, maybe a shoe. There are people that you could grab to replace. I think Finn was a good, replacement. When it comes to intangibility, how much he's maybe led this team, how much he can maybe communicate, maybe, is a motivator. Hard to say. That's maybe where I would, that's where I would be more agreeable, let's say.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
I just don't, I hate to chalk it up to, well, guys, I don't know, Violet's not here no more, I guess they just lose. Like, I don't know, that one seems a little shallow.
Yeah, no, but I think it's fair to just assume that it was probably a pretty big departure.
Sure.
It's also totally fair to think that maybe like the perceived loud voice in the locker room isn't necessarily the one that holds back progress. Maybe facilitates it with
definitely
demanding excellence, right? And having like a notoriously high drive to succeed, right? Like Violet's drive I would love to see in other GOAT candidates. And I think it's ultimately the reason why he gets it.
Yeah. I mean, I think if he has a good year and the Houston Outlaws continue on this track, I think he's pretty I think he's got all but the key to the door of the GOAT candidacy because the Seoul Dynasty and Prophet, God bless him. He's been the front runner for 6-7 years. It's tough to, well, I guess not 6-7, more like 5, but it's hard to really kind of keep that status when Violet has been consistently on top for this long. Again, Houston still have to kind of wrap it up, give it to him, but he's on track. I would wholeheartedly agree.
The one thing I'm a little bit concerned about for him this year, is I think though Houston Outlaws are pretty clearly the second best team in the league. Yes. Well,
yeah, probably.
Infernal?
Yeah. No, that was kind of like my meme answer. Like, oh yeah, but the Infernal scrims. Oh,
maybe.
Yeah, I think gun to head, if I had to answer, I think Houston is probably the only team to really kind of compete. And obviously we saw that head to head. It wasn't fantastic. Definitely a confidence booster in my mind, but yeah, I think they're the only team to hold a candle right now.
So, like, even just let's not look at playoffs just yet, but even the midseason.
Sure.
Not only is the Outlaws in the head-to-head looking like the underdog in most cases. I think if you run that best of 5 10 times, they don't win more than 1 or 2 of those against Reign, as I saw this game, right?
Yep.
That's one problem for them, but there doesn't appear to be anyone else capable in the bracket of taking games of Reign either, right? By viable matchup or whatever is happening. So for the Outlaws to win something, especially in a meta where they don't totally look lost, but rather have their ace player Fearless in on his most important pick, and where honestly, like, we have to commend them for that, have a pretty sweet DPS line that actually picked up the Tracer pretty well. It's not ideal for this roster in terms of DPS lineup, but it's far from a problem. I just wonder, like, what needs to happen for them to be able to catch up, or for anyone else to catch up and eliminate Reign for them, so they can beat whatever the Reign killer is. I'm not sure which paths you can run here as Outlaws to a championship.
It's difficult even when you remove the Outlaws from the equation and go, okay, if I had to build a team to battle the Reign, I genuinely don't know if you can. And if you could, it would be a piecemeal patchwork team of like very particular players from all across the league, right? You would need somebody like someone from the Florida Mayhem that can run from Ramatra to Winston and look seamless, look very talented, very good. The big question for me is, for most teams, because obviously nobody can really compete with Lip on Sombra. I made this joke in our community Discord while we were watching Pro-Am that the second best Sombra in the tournament for Pro-Am was Trick Room's Pummy. And then it was Fitzy is here, the famous Sombra one-trick streamer. And then it was most of the people who you think are good at Sombra. Very few people are actually capable of challenging him. I've been very critical of Happy. Had my opinion changed, and it still isn't to the degree that Lip is just dumping on the Overwatch League. While that's the conundrum, is that you can have such a talented Sombra in a Sombra, viable meta. while also still having hit scan picks be very viable, and that package can still play them to some of the highest level. That's a very, very rare player. It's very difficult to kind of hold a candle to that, I would say. Then on top of that, you have Stalker, who is probably quickly becoming one of the best tracers in the Overwatch League, bar none. Period. The end. And then you have a championship backline, who is absolutely bulletproof. And God forbid you have to play double flex and you bring out Vigilante, right? Like, at least in this meta, it's tough to really hold a candle. You would need a very particular counter strat to like shut down Lip. And I think Outlaws kind of have the makeup to do that. Like, I'd love to see Happy on more Hanzo. I think at this point, I'd like to see, as maybe heretical as this is, I'd like to see what the team looks like with more Gargoyle in the starting lineup. Maybe playing more D.Va, maybe playing a little bit more Ram. I think there is something there that could at least throw Atlanta a different look, that they aren't just kind of like running, the gambit on you. That's kind of where I would want to see Houston and Junkbuck approach this from as we get farther along. But yeah, when it comes to midseason, as it stands right now, it is, I mean, what do you do? It is near impossible. You would need, and even the attack vectors that I had coming into the preseason aren't necessarily like paying out, right? Or at least it's hard to kind of tell if they are struggling at the tank rotation, because Donghak and Hawk seem like they're sharing playtime, and the team really isn't missing a beat. Like, yeah, Houston might just be able to flex Fearless on control maps. Shoutouts to RD and Overwatch Charts for kind of piecing together this model that kind of showcases how strong both Winston and Houston are on these control maps. Obviously, the only map that they won. And I mean, for my money, kind of only map they look really competitive on. It's a tough build to kind of tackle the rain right now. I don't know if matching their style is the right counterplay. I think I'd like to see them branch out a little bit. I'd like to see a little bit more Hanzo to try to get Lip off the Sombra. And even then, it's tough, because obviously you still want Fearless on Winston. It's tough. I don't know. There isn't a clear answer, at least not one that's been blueprinted as of yet.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like it, because this creates a pretty clear narrative.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think it's also going to be interesting what it looks like after the patch, depending on what we're getting. I think
true.
If we do get a Junker Queen meta, that is one that is very distinctly different, that promotes very different type of teams.
Yep.
So that could be transformational. But for now, we're in a pretty good spot, I think. Once again, definitely personally like the decision to stick with this patch and see it out.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, just quickly on Shock, if you think that they are not good at adapting it to metas, do you think they'll just towards the end now, like they get their bearings and improve rapidly?
Normally, I would say yes. I would say, yeah, this is about the time that Shock kind of gets it together. But with the what I'm guessing, and this is a guess, from the increase in Queen, Ram, and D.Va usage that we're seeing from week 2 into week 3 from all teams, barring APAC, mind you, because I think just the deviation between the two teams or the two regions is creating like their own meta pockets, like it always has. I would normally say yes. This is probably the time where, week 3 is where Shock probably gets it together. They find their sea legs within the meta, and they, look completely in form. That isn't the case. And that's where I have to err on the side of caution and point my finger towards extemporaneous circumstances, right? I don't even know if that's the right word, but we're going to run with it. Orbiting circumstances, right? Like not being in great housing. The players maybe being a little checked out because they can't necessarily practice all that well. I do think that does affect you. I think it's obvious that it is affecting them, because I don't think you just magically have talent vampires sap you of your energy. Yeah, I think this team is a little lost in the sauce, and if they can't get it across the line versus the Justice, and they need a hope and a prayer to go to Game 5 versus New York, I'm not gonna lie, I've chalked it up for them for midseason. I don't even know if they go at this point. I think it might even be tactical. It might even be a tactical advantage for them to not go, to try to make the best playoff stand possible if it's really that bad. And I that's where we're at with the Shock right now. Like, I don't know if going or if trying as hard as you possibly can right now is ideal. You need to really take a hard look at the mirror, and figure out what the problem is. And I don't think flying to Korea is going to help that problem.
That's the problem, actually, because if you don't make midseason, and
true, I mean, yeah, it's a double edge for sure.
I don't think any of their players are World Cup players, correct?
Well, we know Proper isn't. I don't think so. No.
You then have 7 weeks of break.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really not going to let players fly home for that? Are you just going to buckle down in your potentially not like situated environment? Also, are you really going to continue eating these hotel costs if you're still in the hotel?
I would certainly hope that Andy Miller and co can figure out what is going on and get these kids in a home, in a house, get them, acquainted with the area. And I think I would have to imagine the conversation then becomes, this is what we need to do to win. If the end goal, if the reason why we are here is to become world champions, mid-season doesn't really matter. We understand that we made mistakes. We understand, there are things out of our control that have, severely dampened our play. We can't control those. What we can control is what we do at the playoffs, what we do in the second half of the season. Maybe that can kind of regain the classroom. If the analogy makes sense, right? If the classroom is lost, there's really not much a teacher can do. You need to somehow reach and get to the heart of the problem, both of the problem and the players, to try to grip them again and get everybody back on the same page, because it does seem like a lost classroom at this point. It does seem like a stinky locker room. I like the analogy, like you said. If this was any other team, I think I'd be throwing apples and pears and all kinds of rotten tomatoes. But because this is such a talented roster and a talented coaching staff, I do cope a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, not as much as I think. And this is another kind of meta topic. I think there is just so much anti-cope going on where everybody's like, no, Shocker shit. We knew they were shit from Pro-Am. Y'all are capping. Oh, it's because Proper didn't have his Wheaties the right way and the temperature of the room. Come on. Okay. It's gotten a little out of hand at this point. The team is underperforming. They are poop. Everybody understands that they are not good at this point. I think we are lying to ourselves if we think that this team is not good. Or has the potential to be good. They're just not doing anything or they're not doing anything with that potential, rather.
Yeah, fair.
I'm not completely sold. I think a new patch, some fresh set of eyes, maybe with a nice break, depending on what these players like, because that was kind of my natural reaction to what you were kind of raising an eyebrow to, was okay, yeah, you're right. Maybe taking a break is going to be worse for this team. That's tough to say, right? But as it stands now, and you look at the Shock's week 4 matchups, it's against Houston, it's against Valiant. You're probably not beating Houston.
Yeah, no.
Are you beating Valiant?
Yeah.
I'd hope so. I'll say, yeah, you probably do, but is it without taking a beating, taking a couple bruises from the guy Seeker and Paintbrush? Oof. That ain't nice. We don't like that too much now, do we?
What if Justice is just good?
I don't think they're bad, but I don't think they're particularly good.
I mean, they haven't really been tested yet, right? Like, other than I guess they got schlopped by Boston, right?
They played Vegas, they played London. Yeah, Boston's probably the only one. And yeah, they've been kind of coasting a little bit. Obviously, they lost to Houston this week. Next week they don't play. Week 5 they play New York, and then they play Glads. That's the kind of troubling part, is like their matchups are either way too high or way too low.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, yeah,
But-
are you beating Glads? Probably not. As much as I was poo-pooing on Glads in the preseason, they've kind of come out and shown that they will just put people away. They are a little bit of a knockout artist, as much as I don't think they're like macros all there, but I don't think very many teams have great macro right now, so they get to hide a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard for Justice to be tested. That's probably going to have to come by way of knockouts. And by knockouts, I mean like the tournament, not like the analogy.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it's tough.
That's a tough run. I still, like, congratulations to the Justice for really solid start. I think if they play like they played against Shock, also against Boston, that's a much more competitive series. Alfie is crazy.
He do be crazy.
I think that's all really positive. I think, like, also they have a reasonable amount going for them. I hope JMax health improves, of course.
Yes, of course. Don't want,
Let me quickly voice. I don't really understand what's going on there. Like, what is wrong with your healthcare system, Joe?
What is wrong with it? What's right with it? Let's put it that way. I'm gonna preface what I'm about to say with, I hope JMac is healthy. I hope he finds health and is recuperating at home. And I wish him nothing but the best. I think that there's more to read in between the lines there. It doesn't shock me after what happened with Vegas that, maybe there's some questions. Maybe it's in his mind. Maybe it's from the team. That, is it really working out? Is it, is he still wanting to do it? That's the feeling that I get from it, that it's not just like, oh, shucks, guys, I got to the pneumonia and I can't go to the doctor. That to me seems like a little too far-fetched to believe that, like,
I think, like,
it's not, I don't know.
It can be something that
I think, like, it's in between, right? It's a little column A, little column B.
I feel like if you're already, like, super high stress and you got to run a life here and you really want it, and your healthcare professional doesn't speak your language, and you're also not able to be supported by your family in those situations, I think that can take a toll. And also, like, as psychology is part of your regeneration pathway, so to speak. Yeah, I think there's a world where it's all, or I think it's very likely, actually, that it's just a situation where he probably will still contribute. I think, like, Amaz and JMac had a long-lasting relationship. Already going back to Paris Eternal, so I don't think that there would be, or it's likely that there would be any infighting. So, but yeah,
no,
it's a really,
it doesn't scream infighting.
In any other scenario, my bullshit alarm goes off, right? Like, let me just say that, and let me just say I haven't asked anyone about context or anything, but like, no, like, once again, we're back to pattern recognition, where I see something like this pop up on socials. There's probably something there, but it's probably very convenient.
Yes, I think it is a convenience thing. It could be also a cost cutting thing as well, where it's like, okay, yeah, you want to go home, that's fine, but we're not going to pay you. You're just going to have to go home, and you're going to have to go. Like, we're not going to be able to do that. We're, if you can't be here in office, we're just going to let you go. If you want to help, that's fine. You can, but we're just not going to let you, go home and recoup and then bring you back. You know what I mean? Just as our, let's call it what it is. They're on a budget. That wouldn't shock me either, right? I think it is my bullshit meter pops off when it's, he's just sick, guys. He's just gonna go home and he's just off the team now. So see ya. Best wishes. It's like, huh? That's weird. Okay. That doesn't seem like the full story.
You said the budget word, Joe.
I did. I said the B word.
And this is where I think I have to get on my soapbox.
Oh. Is it? Am I wrong? Are they not on a budget? Or are they just
no?
Money?
They are, but
okay.
And I like, to me, and this is not. This isn't about the Paris Eternal. This isn't about Avalla. This isn't about the practice of signing 5 players. This isn't even particularly about Drew McCourt and his spending strategy with the Paris Eternal. It's not necessarily about the head office of the league that facilitates an economic environment while holding all the broadcast rights to not create a lucrative product. It is maybe more so about a company that has a reputation that doesn't allow sponsors to leave dollars here. But to me, seeing Avalla having to play this game is the lowest point in the Overwatch League history. Never once was, and of course, everyone realizes that when they see 5-man rosters, people get sick. People, and I'll talk about why this happened more later. This was going to happen. To see it happen like this is brutal. And it is brutal in the most cynical sense, right? Because look at what has to go wrong in order for that situation to occur. You have to have a league where ownership is so jaded that going cynically minimum is possible, where you only have 5 players. You do not have a 6th player to get on your roster. You have to sign a general manager that never has been a professional player in the Overwatch League, or is, general GM, I think. And if that wasn't enough, like, that could have all been fine, right? Like, this is not necessarily the situation alone that facilitated this. No, this is a roster that doesn't have a team house. And therefore, it is very likely that at some point in the season, one of their providers where your facility isn't double hooked up to 2 providers that could cover, that one of them won't have internet at the time that you're playing. So there are up to 10 different parts of this industry that have to fuck up horribly in order for this situation to happen. And I'll tell you what, Joe, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm not part of the tent, for instance. I'm not sure, there is such a systemic failure on everyone that this can occur. That it's like jobs were not well done. Checks and balances were not provided.
No.
We didn't pitch an honest business with realistic expectations. We did not collect...
shout out Morgan Stanley.
We did not collect franchise amounts that were reasonable. We did not estimate what it would cost. We did not accurately estimate how many people would care about this. We did not facilitate finding alternate ways in order to monetize this. We did not allow teams to get a share of what I believe to be reasonable in terms of what their play provides as promotional value for the game of Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
We did not attract ownership that are endemic and can figure out how to monetize their brands by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they shouldn't be able to be or shouldn't have to be asked to do this, given that they have paid such a high entry fee, and given that
That's right.
the rights holder here has all the commercial pathways in terms of broadcast rights, in terms of the all the rights of the footage connected to it, the sponsorships, the sponsorship regulations, the rev share, generally all of that. Like the burden is clearly there, but for them to then decide that it is okay to field a roster where this can occur, something so incredibly unprofessional. Just 3 years ago, we've popped a lid if this happened in academy teams.
Yeah.
And
it's
rest assured,
bad.
some of the academy teams were probably paid better as well.
Oh, 100%. Shout out Fusion Uni and maybe even Mayhem.
So for all of this to nosedive this hard is crazy. And we'll talk about it tomorrow, but they like then in the same week, the only mild hope for 3 to 10x on attention on this game gets killed.
Yep. Well, I mean, effectively, like we know that PvE is still coming. It is just a shell of what it should have been. It could have been what we were hoping it to be. That's just not going to be the case. And it is going to effectively just be, again, not to completely, run through my points, but yeah, it's just going to be like a weekly haha fun thing that people will, it will build very slowly, or maybe not even build, but reinforce some of the fans that do play the game. I think there will be, some of the itch scratched for people interested in like the story aspect and the non-competitive, fan base. But it's not 5 years worth, right? It's not, it's not what was literally said and sold. Yeah, it's well, I guess like by definition sold, but like it's not what was said, right? Not what was promised. And so yeah, it's a bad week here.
And it's crazy to me. Like, the theory of the boiling frog, right?
Nope.
Like how you cannot throw a frog into boiling water and it won't, like, if you throw a frog in boiling water, it will just jump out immediately. But if you slowly increase the temperature on the frog, it will.
They won't know.
They won't. That's actually wrong. They will. At some point, they will jump out. Okay?
Okay.
Why are we not like the frog? Why is it that we are really quiet about all of this?
Are we?
As a community, as pro players, as professionals running this, I feel like nobody really was too upset by this. It's just like, yeah,
I think, yeah, that's, I mean, guilty as charged. I think I'm in that crowd as well. I think you can only raise so much attention and and this is not me like over-aggrandizing like my position. I've not reported on anything. This is your domain. But I think I've definitely raised an eyebrow and been very critical of the Overwatch League and Blizzard on this podcast in the past. Even in private, obviously way more critical. Historical fence sitter, hello, it's me. But I do have opinions, and I think I've raised them when I do feel strongly. It's tiring, right? It's like, yeah, it's a clown fiesta here, man. And it certainly just isn't getting better. So yelling and screaming about it just isn't. It's just tiresome. It's just draining. And call it cope, but at least it was kind of entertaining to see, you know, Vegas come out and for Luke Mino to have like a at least kind of interesting Hanzo performance and challenge London, I think, on Hollywood. It at least like was attention grabbing for a game that would have not been attention grabbing otherwise. And yeah, no, I agree. It is an utter failure of the league for stuff like this to happen. And I'm much more interested in pointing fingers at the front office. I'm much more interested in pointing fingers at the sales team. I'm much more interested in pointing fingers at Drew McCourt for having a cynically low budget. I almost respect Chengdu more for just being like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just pulling out. Fuck y'all. I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, at least you could do that. I appreciate the opportunity, or at least I respect the chance for some players to at least, you know, live out their pro career. At least they're trying. And you know, that's the thing. Yeah, no, I think I agree that this is it is a much deeper systemic problem. I think you shoulder negative burden. I think if anybody in this scene, you've done more to raise an eyebrow and try to keep integrity high, to try to question the office and wonder, you know, where their brains are at when it comes to certain things. And there's probably a lot of this stuff that is just beyond trying to whistleblow on. So I hope you don't take that to heart, that like, oh, if I could have done more, then, you know, maybe Avalla doesn't have to play. It's so far beyond what a group of people could do. I don't know that even if all of the journalists in the space or all the content creators were just like screaming at the moon, and it felt like a lot of us were, even back in 2020, when we're like, guys, get ready, we're going across the globe. And we're all like, this isn't going to work. This does not make sense. Please don't put players through this. Then it came to hero pools. Nobody wants Zoe's cat to draw hero bans. Please stop. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can say and do before it's like, all right, well, Zoe's cat's drawing hero bans. I guess Avalla's playing. Like, fuck it. Let's go crazy, right? It's so beyond what you can kind of do. And no, yeah, I'm out for blood when it comes to this. I'd love to know why we're on YouTube. I'd love to know if there was a deal. They're very particular in not talking about if that's the case, and I can't imagine why.
Look, that's another thing. Like what you just said, like, better to say nothing. Like, honestly, like I read this like a couple of interviews with Sean Miller, and I think one was with Liz. There was another publication. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting you, but it was a good interview. And in it, like, the one thing that stuck out to me was like, it is overblown to say that this thing and Overwatch League is dying. This thing, I think, was and I'm not just quoting Beverton, like, you can find it. But this thing is like esports. What it made. Okay. Well, esports dying, probably overblown. True.
Yeah.
Overwatch League dying, that it's fair to say that technically this is not the case. But I'm tired of semantic games with this company.
Yes.
This is not Overwatch 2, and this is not Overwatch League.
No.
At least not as it was initially sold to us. And it's fair to scale.
Yep.
Back. But we are currently in a really, like, there have to be some established thresholds of expectation for this, right? And it's just really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The viewership across content creation of Overwatch at large is back to normal levels.
Yep.
They, like, I think I even, like, despite, like, okay, I looked at Johnny Street and said cope. I do agree that this is still one of the better live service games as it is running. I also think it has a lot of content.
It does.
I think it will probably hold the attention of a lot of players. I can't help but be biased towards the end goals of esports.
Sure.
I don't see it really moving the needle there. And I don't see what will. And I don't see how incremental improvements are enough.
Yes. Agreed. At least not in the immediate future. Would you agree there?
Yeah. I mean, and the immediate future matters a lot, right?
Yes,
if you have
especially these days.
Teams like in financial peril, everyone is reporting record losses.
Yep.
The evaluations are going down.
Yep.
They are organizing under law firms.
Yep.
Incremental improvements towards a level that you already had probably in season 1. And you can currently only dream of achieving again. Even though I guess like there were certain benchmarks where playoffs were most watched, blah, blah, blah. But then again, the game is still not available in China. Yep. Like, what? Where's the hope, bro? Like, I'm really, like, it's this ebb and flow of, like, that we've gone through of, like, super droughts. And then, Overwatch 2 is at the... Okay, there was always at least, like, in the far distance, the smallest of carrots.
The PvE! Give it to me! Give me mainline it!
It
just isn't here. It's just not coming.
Yeah, and, like, I also, like, it's just, like, you know, like, a dating sim is not going to help the esport. I'm sorry.
No, obviously not. And I think a lot of the PvE stuff was never going to really help the esport. The idea and the analogy that I've always brought up is like you're getting more people into the IP, and ideally you create a platform for them to translate at least a fraction of that increase into people who are at least interested in the esport side of things. And it's funny we're kind of talking about this now because I was speaking to somebody who is pretty familiar with the Blizzard side of the esport of Overwatch League esports, and I drew a lot of comparisons to how Riot has literally just beaten it into League of Legends fans that they should care about esports. Why do I say this? Because literally, when you open the client to launch League of Legends, you are berated with esports all the time. Period. The end. We're lucky to get it in the launcher.
To be fair, you now see it more frequently also in the clients, but yeah.
I mean, again, do me a favor. Anybody who wants to maybe retort with me on this, and I would even ask you to do this as well. Open the League of Legends client in the midst of one of their biggest tournaments of the year. Wait a week until we're on a nearly equivalent tournament and see the difference just in terms of how the client is laid out. I can see the schedule. I know what teams are playing. I know the narratives. I know the pick. All from clicking on the client. And this has been years of just doing it over and over and over and over and over. It's no wonder that I think their now former CEO is coming out and talking about how like their esports skins are some of their most like bought products, right? They're actually making a lot of money through esports digital goods. That doesn't surprise me when it has been 10 plus years of just sticking to the just you're gonna like this eventually, right? Like it has been consistent from Riot. Blizzard treats us like we're a stepchild, and it's always kind of been that way. Yes, we can talk about, the World Cup is at BlizzCon and this, that, the other thing, and that's great. I obviously I want more of that. But the integration and the conversion is the big question. That's the $1 million question that we're kind of discussing right now. No, dating sims don't do it. No, PvE won't do it.
And I like that they're trying a lot, right?
Sure, yes, get people interested in the IP. But we have, if esports in this space is going to be successful, we need developer support, and I'm not talking about the replay viewer, right? That's just the bare minimum. We don't have replay viewers. We don't have replay access, guys. Like that's where we're at. I'm going big picture. I'm like, okay, give me another 5-10 years and let me beat it into the community that they should care about the shock and proper is the GOAT, right? Why is Faker's name synonymous with success in League of Legends? Why can I go to a gamer who maybe cues Rakan bot every once in a while with their normie friends and ask them about Faker, and they've never seen a game about a professional game of League of Legends, and they probably have a good idea of who that is, right? Why is he transcended reality, right? It's because there is a conversion rate. It has become bigger than life. They have celebrated it. They've marketed it to here and back. We've done none of it. We invited DJ Khaled and some celebrities to come see our show. That's what we did.
I think like what also like all of this is probably not super convincing for someone that has to make the business decision there. I think what might be convincing is I would be very interested to find out how our demographic breaks down, because there was a very interesting video recently by Devin Nash, former CEO of CLG and now marketing agency guy and whatnot. And he broke down what the demographic of League of Legends or in Valorant esports was. And not only is Valorant doing great with women audiences, 30 or 40% or something, 20, 30% of the viewers. That's crazy, by the way. Like that's single digit.
Crazy. That's nuts. I mean, most YouTube channels are like fractions.
Yes.
Like 0.5%.
Yeah, we are also terrible, by the way, in this show.
Yeah, we have no ladies.
We're too turbo.
Shout out to anybody who doesn't identify as a male that watches this shit. So shout outs to you.
But they also have filtered for a pretty young audience that has a lot of recreational budget.
Yep.
And I'd be wondering if we did that with our esports audience. Because I feel like the hope that we had is probably not the case. And I feel like there is something as not just finding an audience, but finding the right audience. And I feel like maybe we never had a chance because the core product, the core value of Overwatch does not vibe with a core competitive product. But I'm also increasingly getting skeptical of esports that try to find their base or their foundation in the North American scene. I think you guys, there's something in the ether where over a longer amount of time, esports and NA is really hard to make work. If you don't have the hype beast culture, and I don't have a great word for this, but if you don't have the attention economy on your side, where it's a lot of influencer advertisement in North America, then you're probably not going to get off. Here in Europe, it's totally feasible to just focus on the core competitive product and make some funny memes around the core competitive product, not be influencers first. If you look at the LEC broadcast, they are not content creation. They are not a content creation platform that slaps on competitive. It's competitive with a, fun
with a side of content.
Right. Yeah. They if they make a song, it's about competitive League of Legends.
Yeah.
About the characters and whatnot. Right.
Yes. It's in reference to, not as a standalone.
Right. And that's that. Like, I feel like whatever, if that is true, then that is more true for Asian countries, where the competitive product also vibes totally with the audience, where they really seem to be able to vibe with professional players and to remember their names and lift them to superstar status.
Yep.
Faker is possibly the most boring personality on the planet. It's very possible.
Probably. It's probably true.
He's the equivalent of watching grass grow, right? As a person.
Yeah.
But he's the most well-known gamer on the planet.
He really is.
Maybe not in NA, but on the planet.
Yeah. In most countries, he's probably top 5, I think, in any kind of name recognition when it comes to esports. It's been fantastic to see him kind of rise.
Who are the biggest? I guess LeBron is but I think you also that to me as a viewer of American sports, yes, there's a core competitive product that you're looking at in terms of the NBA and whatnot, I still like the big stories on less so the big international stories about the NBA are less so about the competitive product and more so about who's doing some dumb shit at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the playoffs. Sure have heard about Ja Morant.
Sure you have. Obviously, that's a little bit different. But I did kind of want to touch on your point of like what our demographic was, right? And this was something that I always, maybe this is a hot take. This was always something that I held on and championed for the Overwatch League, is the amount of people who both got into esports because of Overwatch, and the correlation of those people and those who are here because of the traditional sports-esque model was very interesting, because I felt like those people were very ready to spend money.
Yes, but what if those hardcore fans of core American sports leagues are the guys that are in it for the tribalistic drama and not for the core competitive experience?
Yeah,
because I don't think they inherently competitive cared about the whatever's going on the server.
Right? Yeah, no, they had no idea what was going on. They were here because they came. They were from New York, or they were from Philly, or they were from Dallas, and they were that's their region. They just here to show up.
Don't get me wrong. Like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know, like a fan of Brazilian CS:GO and whatnot, you will say, Yiska, you're off your fucking rocker thinking that we're not celebrating this tribalistically, right? Yeah. True. It is about very delicate thresholds of care, in my mind, where it's not on and off, it's a gradient, and the minutia, the small differences in perception and what you value as a scene and what kind of things you argue about and things you care about, those are the important ones. And then, of course, there's also a lot of just like what's the media culture like, generally speaking. I like my problem is, as a German, we generally get your culture 10 years later.
Sure. Okay? Yeah.
And I feel like, with a German band, I will have to say, I feel like maybe like sports is just getting less and less appealing as an offering. But this is also a wild take that I've tried or fielded for a couple of times. I honestly think if you hit the reset button on all sports and NA and let just everyone have the same knowledge on how to create entertainment, start from zero, there's no shot sports comes off the ground again. It would all the only sports that would make sense are like the UFCs in this current climate, where it is more about the drama and creating a storyline than it is about the core competitive product. The reason why the NBA works is because it has slotted into the space,
the cultural zeitgeist,
into culture, into the thing you talk about, because we do not have large guiding cultural narratives anymore, right? Like, if you think back, like the last show that the world watched, Game of Thrones. There's none of, we're super divided. It's not like I can now go to a water cooler and just talk about one particular thing and expect everyone to know about it, right?
Yeah.
That's no longer a thing. And I think people crave that sort of connection and these north stars
of
entertainment. Icebreaker, but also just cultural lubrication and things that glue, cultural glue in some instance, right? And I think if you create that and try to fill into that meaning or pour into that meaning space, I think especially in North America, a lot of that would probably vibe with maybe this is biased, but southern states more.
Yeah.
Everything else would just we Germans still don't drink for enjoyment. Mostly, we drink beer for some
social,
toxic, torture, and for the stories
competitive
that they none of particularly my town, the alcohol we drink is fucking disgusting, and the reason you drink it is some faux fucking masculine
Badge.
bullshit.
Okay.
But like, I feel like the guys in my age group that I converse with, we're just like, I'm gonna drink an appletini if I fucking like drinking appletini, bro. Like, and I feel like that would be true if you reset sports. Then like whatever bullshit, like it would just pour into whatever everyone likes. And I assume that sports as the competitive like everyone's already like I'm competing every day with in the fucking marketplace. Like the pressure's on me. I'm looking on Instagram. I'm getting bodied in the marketplace. Okay, I'm getting bodied in the marketplace of ideas. I'm getting bodied in the marketplace of body. I'm getting bodied in the marketplace of intelligence. I'm shit. I don't want to compete, bro. Like, get the fuck off with competitive products. Okay, give me something wholesome to relax my soul. Is what I think the North American audience is increasingly saying for a younger demographic. They're getting out of their SAT prep courses after 12 hours because if you don't, like, you're internally condemned to a lower class life that's less and less feasible to do. So, like, you better fucking study up, and then you go into your college classes, and you better be in an Ivy League schools, otherwise you're fucked as well. And I feel like all of this necessarily exerts pressure. Now, counter argument to that is Asian countries are worse at this, but competitive products vibe with that.
Yep.
So maybe that theory is half baked, but the bottom line is I feel like us locating all our franchises so heavily in NA fucked us from the beginning. I think if we had to honestly, sometimes I wonder how different the Overwatch League would have fared if Rogue and Fnatic had gotten their two European spots. You couldn't have as readily discarded Europe as a location. How that would have fared in terms of talent development, in terms of location, in terms of market share. I think especially like if you find a Spanish audience that works incredibly well in other esports.
It does.
And
it probably would have worked here, but yeah, it would have been fantastic here.
Serve the French audience a little bit better. Maybe you even have a Turkish team going on or something. The British audience, like that's way more sticky. Then you force that to be a very different setup, and then already we're dealing with the train rails we're on look very differently. And I feel like if that had happened, we're probably not sitting here seeing Avalla play this game.
No, of course not. Of course we don't.
And once again, it's not nothing against Avalla. It's really just...
No, it's an example. It's a crystalline fruit of the tree, of the shit tree that we have planted.
It's possibly one of the worst Overwatch League teams of all time. Yeah. One of the least resourced Overwatch Leagues of all time. Being forced by one of the worst economic positions the Overwatch League has been in all time. Having one of the worst setups of an Overwatch League of all time. Like, at least Valiant had a fucking, like, I don't know what it was, a warehouse or whatever they slept in. Like a shared one. Like, one of their guys organized. The stars...
that much better. But...
The stars have to align, and it's like the Big Dipper just turned into a toilet, and we're flushing right now, okay? Like, that's what it felt like. Yes. And then this is the intro to tomorrow's episode. Then you also kill all hope, and I'm dooming. Like, I will say, okay, here, small opium. I don't think it would have ever worked to integrate PvE, and we would have necessarily at some point sat here with my WoW PTSD going like, oh my god, PvE is now prioritized, and like we're not getting as many heroes as we could be for the PvE game because 40 fucking talents is crazy, resources. And like the balance of this game is nuts and whatnot, right? Like all of this. Yeah. So that is positive, actually, for Overwatch League specifically. And I'll also say, I'm sure some people from the league will watch this and say, fuck this guy, only half-baked knowledge. Fair. Like, I'm being a little bit emotionally dooming right now. I also know a lot of you guys polish up your... maybe. Yeah, fuck it. polish up your resumes. Like it's a really hard time to still believe in this game, and yeah, it's like maybe it gets better from here. It's just really hard to predict.
It's hard to see
where from where.
It is hard to see how it does get better. There are not too many outs outside of Microsoft saving us. Oh, daddy, please come with a briefcase. Yeah, no, it is difficult. And to the people who from the front office that do watch this, I don't know. I have some choice words for you that I'm not going to say today because we're already going a little long.
I also think like they're generally polishing a turret pretty well, right? Like you're probably one of the lower rungs of blamability at this point. The people that sat in your chairs beforehand, in the generation beforehand, they fucked it. The heads that had this scandal happen at Blizzard, they fucked it for us. Whoever signed people to 20 million to plus sponsorship deals, therefore enforced necessarily a VC dependent culture onto this esport and esports at large, maybe fucked us. Those guys are the ones with the responsibility. And once again, I do believe like everyone also probably fucked it at some level. Once again, I wouldn't exclude myself from that here, but it's a rounding error on those mistakes, man.
Sure. Yes. Nobody's asking for a perfect game from anybody, right? But when I have to clamor for any kind of excitement, for any kind of content, for any kind of publicity, for a push through the client, for esports to be for esports to be casualized. Yeah, no, I have lots of questions. I have lots of fingers to point. And yeah, I would be very interested to speak with you. That being said, I agree. It is hard to see where this game goes from here. There's a lot to that monologue that I would love to kind of pick apart. I would tend to pretty staunchly disagree. I would almost argue opposite to the hypothetical like dream scenario that if we weren't, I think the mistake may have almost been trying to be global in an trying to be global with a Western focus for an esport that was trying to cosplay traditional sports. You know what I mean? I think if that was the model that we wanted to go with, I think it only makes sense if we are strictly NA first. We build a proof of concept. We develop an audience that is paying, that is willing to kind of come out and just wave those tribal flags. And then we branch out, right? I think that was the big mistake, at least in my mind. Or this is like vastly different and we are global and we aren't trying to do a weird meat sports cosplay and it's just normal esports. And I feel like that's also just another out. I think we have to go like, we have to hit the polls, right?
Yeah, I feel like just it's probably never. I'll dial on his hill. Like I know during the Jampan, for instance, that I did, like people disagreed with that point, saying like, if this works, we will love that we went the localization route because we can then optimize. And fair,
sure, of course.
Like if you can actually make it work, then of course. I just don't think you will ever make it work. I think if you want to appeal to a young demographic, this demographic will increasingly be international and netizen with their views and values.
Yep.
They're raised on the internet. They exchange on the internet. They work remotely.
Yep.
They are not bound by location. They have no allegiance to location.
Correct.
And location, anything but a virtual space, which is the internet, or their niche communities, it is not likely to work. And the best thing that you can do is signal or plant virtual flags in the ground of values and or entertainment that young people can attach to and become fans of. And I think all esports that show growth, especially in the Western world, do this the best. They plant virtual flags into the ground. They've abandoned anything but, occasional opportunities for folks to catch some live esports, but not on the regular. It's more like it makes total sense for me, for instance, that the LAN for Overwatch sold out immediately. Like every once in a while, it sounds nice to watch one Overwatch match or like an event a year. I wouldn't go to the best concert in the world more than once.
Yeah.
Maybe twice. Okay. Definitely not 3 times. Right? Like my memory is not as short as to having to relive it 3 times. Okay. So I feel like you're competing against wild entertainment products now, and those virtual spaces, the availability, the coverage, like all of this is super important, and there couldn't have been a worse time to start a localization, from my point of view.
Yes, it definitely. With hindsight, I don't think anybody is trying to invest into that. However, at the time, it made sense to me, at least.
Right, it was worth a try. Like I don't condemn them for trying to find that, because we haven't really done it. That proof of concept is dead. That is not the mistake. The mistake is the magnitude of what kind of capital we ask people to raise based on projections that. Like that Morgan Stanley report is an absolute joke for anyone that has any idea, right? Like about endemic monetization. So, it's a rough one, and it's also especially rough because it was so forecastable. I'm pretty sure. Like if you go to anyone in the space around 2016, 2017, when the first waves of this were starting, you'll find opinions that pretty closely resemble to what eventually appears to be happening. And it's worth a try, especially like the localization. I'm not mad at trying that, right? Like I could very easily be wrong. I honestly think like maybe to a degree it still hasn't been proven to be wrong. I think it has relatively well proven that it's less likely to work in NA. But because as I perceive it, the real tribes that people care for in esports is nations. Like
at least here, it feels like it. That's for damn sure. I think there still is room for that to be explored. I think in a dream scenario where season 1 is completely localized and only endemic to NA, I think you can begin to develop and derive some future growth. I think that's when you can really start to push local markets. I think you can really try and prove that this is something that you're going to want to come out and see every once in a while. You want to go see a baseball game. You want to go see an esports game. It's something that people are, you start to build your niche into that cultural zeitgeist, into that mini like little ecosystem. The only way that works is just through time and just I hate saying this, but just like throwing money at it. Marketing, publicizing, getting I hate this, sounds really fucking vapid, but like getting the word out there. And we never really got a chance to do that. A, because we were so hell bent on being global, and B, because COVID hit when we were going to try to do that.
Yeah.
We sat on the fence of 2 different things. We tried to do everything all at once, and it was I'm gonna call a spade a spade. Thus far, it's been an abject failure.
Yeah,
it just has been.
I will also say, like, I think if I have our audience pegged right, a lot of you will probably be inclined, or have maybe already at this point, but while listening, written into the comments that you wouldn't be here unless this was a localized thing, and that's fair. I think that's the filtering process, and it would be rather sad if that wouldn't facilitate a particular bend, because that would mean it would we filtered for the people that like general esports filtering even more, right?
We've missed the mark that much that we haven't gotten the trad fans
for sure. So I don't want to discredit your appetite. I just want you to look around and estimate in your home city how many people are likely to show up to a fan meet.
Yeah.
You can look at those screenshots for the Washington Justice, right? It's nice. It's not 1,000 people nice, or several thousand people nice, right?
Oh.
And yeah, the scale of because the scale isn't there. For instance, we have someone in our Discord that always wants merch and whatnot of a particular team, and they won't ever get it because the scale is not there to justify producing these products at scale, right? Now you're not getting the product, right? And you're sort of limiting the market, and I think the effect of also excluding people by going to the localization is not to be underestimated. I will also say, now that I was at the Dota Major, I was in Copenhagen for CS, I was I'm going to be at MSI. The experience of perceiving other esports and their communities and their pro players awards a certain insight into the otherness of those scenes. And I feel like those long-lasting esports just have, if you guys are unaware, a sort of Lindy effect to their Lindy effect is basically the longer something lasts in its essence, the more likely it is to last going forward in the future. So, or to be robust, right? So it's very unlikely that next year Christianity is going to evaporate, right? There's several thousand years of history. It's very likely to continue next year.
Yeah.
Less so the case for the religion of Prophet, who I founded in 2018. I'm not even sure if I'm still part of that religion, right?
Doesn't sound like it.
So the point being, those guys have figured out something, or have amassed a fan group that is loyal and is very robust to change now. And to see what kind of audiences those are super informative as to what a sustainable esports product. And I'm not saying they're close. A lot of, especially the wealth game esports are still running deficits, heavy ones, right? And with hands off, and are in part subsidized by very unethical actors, from gambling sponsors to whoever owns those leagues. I think that's still it informs you what kind of a fan base you have, and especially in Riot's case, I think there it's very interesting who they attracted, and also maybe in some essence shaped to a point where the recreational income can subsidize those scenes, right? And I would wager that it's very unlikely that by year 7 we will see a manager play in Valorant in their franchise league, or it's not a franchise league, a partner league, right?
Yeah.
And there are reasons for that, and there are reasons of audience selection. There are reasons of the very the very foundational beliefs and or makeup of what their competitive product is. It's once again the filtering of those fans. And as much as that sucks, if you aren't willing to pony up certain costs, then you're not that desirable, and you're not contributing towards the sustainability of the esports you're watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we're also in a system where if you can't afford it, you're also less likely to get what you want, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to our market system. So,
yeah.
Okay, not to ramble too much, but the thing that we've been saying for years, we fucked ourselves by the foundation, and we're having other people that didn't get us here having to make up for these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, that's also true for the PvE talk, which we'll have tomorrow. So I hope everyone realizes that there's limited responsibility or culpability towards these outcomes. But nevertheless, I'm still super frustrated that this was allowed to happen. And I guess what I also didn't mention is that it was allowed to happen from a rules perspective. I think like the league was pretty hands off on this. I think you could totally argue that there should be something in place where maybe a rating requirement or whatever for pro players, or whatever sensible way you can come up with. Limit minimum amount of contenders games is not a great one, but like something that maintains the competitive integrity of the esport. I know you do not have leverage at this point, but this is really giving up on whatever vision and or feel of the league you have. We're already every other day, like broadcast day, I look at the games and say, that's all shit here. Like none of those are appealing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is 3-0 Overwatch all the way down. And then sometimes I get surprised that it's 3-0 Overwatch in the other direction, which with the Justice and Shock, right? Like
somehow it's not better, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it. I think we differ on some things. I think we ultimately agree that this is just not. We're not providing a space for people who we've tried even to select for. I would argue that I think we've done a pretty piss poor job selecting for anybody in particular. But nonetheless, we're doing a whole lot of nothing really, really quickly. And it's getting hard to see, like you said, the light at the end of the tunnel. So, yeah, when it comes to budgets, it doesn't shock me when, the esports world is already kind of crunching down, and then you have, a kid whose internet goes out either due to like an outage or just daily maintenance. And, a GM has to step in. Yeah, that doesn't shock me. Sad to say, it's become apathy. And here we are. It's 2023. Avalla's in your room and she's got a rip tire and she's popping shit off. Credit to her.
Well played, all things considered.
Yeah.
It's like part of the farce is how close that one map got. Which of course is also
was
once again based on an organization that's based in Britain but has to play out of LA because why not? It's the Overwatch League.
Localization, baby. We love it. We eat it up. Speaking of somebody who's recently localized, I know that like this is a complete energy pivot, but we gotta slap up a little bit. If you want to get back on that soapbox real quick to lambast me about the Seoul Infernal, I mean, be my guest. You're right.
My favorite
you were
topic.
Just right.
I might just be like God's gift to a hot take.
Yo, was it really that hot that they could have won?
Both of those games going 2-0? Joe.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd call that hot. Maybe I'm being a semantics Andy, but I don't think that's crazy. I think that's winnable. Well, going 2-0 is surprising, but don't know if it's hot.
I'm not sure
Pretty
what the
lukewarm.
percentages are. How many people got that right?
Listen, okay, if we're going if we're going populist, I want to raise an eyebrow there because that doesn't seem very consistent with your viewpoints, sir.
What doesn't?
Like trying to argue that, like, oh well, yeah, I don't know, the community might have said that the charge should have won, so I don't know.
But it's
pretty
both of
hot
them,
to
right?
me.
Like, I feel like the percentages were like probably 70-30 in both cases. To hit both
Probably,
of those is kind of interesting. Like, you know, like also like you're now all suffering how obnoxious I am because of some of those assholes that will inevitably DM me and say scrimbux are bullshit.
Yes,
Eric is bringing it up. Okay, 65 for charge. What was the spark one?
I'm sure it was close-ish.
65. Okay, I'm once again underestimating the game of Philly fans and their delusion. But yeah, no, like I feel like there's all of those predictions that over the years, like Valiant beating Vancouver Titans, like packing Valiant,
2019, yeah,
right, 2019, like first loss, that prediction, whatnot. That is all coming from scrims. You can you can keep bookmarking my tweets, bro. You can make like quirky little tweets about it.
Insufferable.
But at the end of the day, scrimbux, woo baby. I don't know, top 50 preds at the moment. Eric, who copies my homework, is currently second. I'm such an obnoxious asshole. And improves upon it. But by the way, I'm almost honestly, part of me is almost exactly as upset about the way how pick'ems are being handled as I am about the Avalla situation. It's like, why the hell are we having to predict all the brackets at once? Like, if this really counts towards pick'em points, I'm popping a lid off. Like, please, this is my one thing. Like, please
let me pick'ems in peace.
I need some receipts to be just an insufferable asshole, and you're taking this away from me. It's insane. But yeah,
I want to interject. Yes, Eric is leading our pick'ems.
No, he's second
leaderboard.
Worldwide.
Oh, is he? Damn, that's actually kind of crazy. Yeah. That's nuts. Well done. Yeah, that's nuts. Yes, Eric may or may not be copying Yiska's homework. That's fair. But it sounds like there's a little bit more under the hood other than just scrimbux. So again, I present my evidence. Eric being second worldwide.
Eric
plugged in.
Eric,
but with a machine.
You can say it now. Why did you pred also both Seoul Infernal games for Seoul Infernal after you saw them lose against Seoul Dynasty?
Scrimbux. Woo!
There we go, boy. There we go.
I think that's fair, and I think anybody saying that scrimbux don't mean anything are just as stupid as saying scrimbux are the ultimate determinant factor, right? I think they are correlative. I think as somebody, raised his hand, guilty as charged. I don't have scrimbux. I actively try not to have scrimbux. Sometimes Yiska just feeds them to me. Will I pred them? Sometimes. In the case of Seoul Infernal, I did not.
Look, there is a skill to him, right? Like, scrimbux are sort of like looking at the night sky and trying to derive information, okay, Joe? Some assholes look at the night sky, go like, that means like Venus is in retrograde, therefore we're incompatible as mates.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the night sky and go, that's north. Let's go there. Okay. That's the difference.
Somehow it's worse. Somehow it's more simple.
Same thing with stats. People look at numbers. Number of Kevster and Proper almost comparable. Therefore, equally as good players. I look at the night sky and go, now Proper is the North Star, okay? Like if you put them into context of like fights taken per minute, if you look at more representative stats like first kills, first death, first kills in the first 3, damage output as displayed by charge time, the impact rating as to like who does
Player
he kill,
impact rating.
player impact rating as to who does he kill, like because we very clearly see in Overwatch 2, like if you kill the tank, that's much more impactful than killing, I don't know, a DPS or whatever. Naturally, like this, like if there is a certain skill to reading information, and I will also say, my God, do I get absolutely wrecked in some of those scrimbux interpretations because teams are just like wild with it. Like once again, like I had Dallas pretty high up there for a long time. Okay, because they're inherently unpredictable. I think
That's true.
What did I?
I think historically you've been pretty bad on Dallas. Just throughout, I think Rush's tenure there, because historically they're piss poor in scrims, but their live performance is completely different.
Yeah.
So hard to read. Again, I think there is something to parsing through information. I think selling the product of scrimbux as the best determinant of match prediction is probably, yeah, I would say it's the best. Do I think you can still compete? I am 4 points below you, sir, and no, very little scrimbux. So I can still compete. I can still hang. Am I beating you? No, I'm not.
You kind of have proxy scrimbux, okay?
Like, do I?
Yeah, you hear me talk about scrimbux, so you. Like...
And I actively pred against them most of the time.
Oh well. Yeah. Also, you have witchcraft with your Titan's shit, so. Maybe you are the person that looks at the night sky and like suddenly the stars start shifting like some fucking Lion King shit, and you summon like the Great Punk or some. I don't know what you're doing.
Punk is my Mufasa. He speaks to me through Mars being in Lemonade. Anywho, another again, Infernal. They look fantastic. I as somebody who has been hilariously. I do like Mag. I think it's less Mag and more of just the team just looking fundamentally crispy. Like
sure.
The if you want a great example, and I don't know if we're gonna get to like why I think this is, but if you want to go back and you want to look at the tale of two Sombras, go back and look at the Seoul Infernal versus the Hangzhou Spark. Shy's Sombra, kind of poop. Something he's like not been asked to play throughout his history, his career. It's not, within his wheelhouse. It's okay. The Seoul Infernal, on the other hand, the difference really kind of manifests in how the EMP is used and how quickly the collapse is integrated, right? It's night and day. The opportunity at which Seoul Infernal will capitalize on these EMPs. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what's happening. Spark, on the other hand, I've got Gusha being purple, jumping away, letting his supports die. Shy's EMPing. Nobody's talking. Leaves left the voice channel and is listening to lo-fi beats to study and relax to. It's a mess. It's crazy. That team that showed up versus a Seoul Infernal, I unironically worry about when it comes to the pick'ems. I can't recall. I can pull it up probably pretty quickly, but I can't recall exactly what side of the two brackets that they're on. They're very lucky that it's not on the side of O2. I'd say that. Because I don't know what happens to them if they have to pair off versus a contenders team right now, or the top contenders team. It was pretty dire. It was not good. Those supports for Spark got bullied, and Infernal not only came out with some creativity with the ball. Shoutouts to Coach Spilo, who did a whole rundown of why that seemingly worked. If I can parse through it mostly, or synthesize it, I think it had more to do with the support choices with the wrecking ball, less to do with the ball itself. It kind of facilitated maybe the support choices, less so vice versa. Yeah, Infernal looked good. Infernal looked damn good. And I think that's kind of funnily enough, the two horses right now.
Here's the scary part, Joe. They are actually unreal anti-clutch at the moment. They are tossing left and right. It's crazy. Like it might be one of the most anti-clutch teams of all time. These guys should be winning dominantly, way more matches than they're actually doing. My God, do they toss some fights? Like the Dynasty last fight is still insanity to me. Okay.
I mean, yes, I think at this point you can kind of explain that away, though.
Also, as good as this team is looking right now, individually, uncharacteristically from what we've seen last year, I don't think Zest has a great season so far. It's a solid one, but not like he was last year.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I will see this boy just no clip air. Okay.
Yeah.
Then like uncharacteristic pulse pump misses.
Yep.
Mispacing, killing himself with his own bomb. That's unusually sloppy in comparison to what he was capable of last year. And that's also why I think it's very possible for him to once again become that genius carry player for them. It's possible that we move into a different meta after the midseason, where maybe we get some Genji or whatever going, and then I trust him to be able to carry much more. But like, this isn't even a good meta for them. In many ways, they're forcing their own interpretation with the ball onto opponents. And none of those DPS are playing a lot of their preferred picks either, right?
Yeah.
I think what happened is Fixer leveled up big time. That's
without a doubt. Yeah.
That's a large difference here, right? And then wait, I'm drawing a blank. Who's the flex support name? Skewed is
fantastic.
Yes.
Yep. He's a class player. Like he's unironically not just the brig guy, right? Like can hang.
Yep.
If not like one of the better Anas in APAC right now. Like very, very, very talented. The amount of times, and again, I hate to draw a note back to the Spark game, but it stands pretty prominent in my mind as one of the games that I actually got to like really frame by frame kind of go through. The amount of times Gusha is just constantly purpled, having to like rotate backwards because they cannot posture for a fight for their lives. That is skewed. That is skewed alone because he understands the game plan. He understands that if they can't hold space, they can't create dives, they can't be proactive. Lo and behold, if Spark can't be proactive, Shy gets caught out, right? And it's not just getting caught out, it's him getting greedy with his translocator, it's him not being able to posture to set up a dive, right? Like if you have no legs, you can't run. I hate how simple that sounds, but it's the truth, right? Like it's pretty hard to run on your hands. And that's what it feels like the Spark had to do. And on top of that, when they would try to like over engage, the supports just die. If you go back through that game and you just look at the kill feed and you look at how many times, or rather, shameless plug, go to Winston's lab, go look at the kill position of both Monk and Langsa for that match in particular, I guarantee you it is 1 and 2. Out of like just a fractional way that Broy kind of calculates it, right? Like they are the first to die in almost every single one of those fights.
Yeah.
And if it isn't them, it's Shy.
Yeah.
Because they have no business hitting a W key ever in that series. Why? It's skewed. It's mag. I'd say it's also MN3. Fixa also isn't throwing. Right? Like the questions have been answered. The support line is fantastic. The DPS are more than capable. A little less than maybe we expected. And mag, funnily enough, crazy guys, when you put them in a locker room that isn't toxic, you get magic.
There I have actually no idea. So I saw Platchet talk about this as well. I think I'd be a little bit more cautious if it was toxicity or if it's just a bad fit, right? Like,
Sure, yeah.
I don't think
I don't hate that read either.
right? Like it doesn't necessarily always have to be like people are just like throwing shit at their heads. Maybe the problem is that everyone's getting along too nicely, even though I think that's a lower probability situation. But
neither is good. I agree.
It can be a playstyle mismatch. It can be a coach and player mismatch where they just have very different ideas about Overwatch. And all of those are no one's fault, but maybe the guy that selects you and misattributes.
Oh yeah, of course. And that and let me be very clear. Let me unpack that for a second from my comment rather. That is not like, oh, I thought, I blame X player, I blame Mag for not like adapting. No. It's more towards the community narrative that this kid was washed and he sucks and Mag's terrible. It's like, no. It is very clear that whatever it is, if it's a culture fit, if it's, he doesn't get along with somebody or they get along a little too well and it's not being, we're not creating friction to grow, whatever it is, right? It isn't working. It hasn't worked in the last 3 years. Why do we keep trying to do it? Please get him on a better team because we know he's talented, right? It's another one of those things. I hate to circle back to the shock discussion, but player has talent. Question mark. Player has no more talent. I don't know. My bullshit detector is off the charts in the question mark column, right? Like it doesn't compute. That doesn't make sense that they just lose their skill overnight, right? There is an external factor that is limiting them from playing this game like we've seen them play before. We have to figure out why that is and remedy it. And it looks like Mac has found his solution, and it's been returning home to Seoul with the Infernal and absolutely slapping the region. They look fantastic and are probably one of the favorites. We'll get to APAC predictions probably tomorrow, hopefully. They look, I think I speak for everybody in saying that they're probably one of the two favorites getting out, being one of the two APAC representatives. To the prediction of probably absolutely nobody, including us, because I think we had them collectively third in our power rankings. Like a pretty clear third. I think it went Dallas or Spark. Yeah. The other Dallas or Spark choice, and then Infernal, and then maybe Charge.
Yeah.
And now the third and fourth power ranking seeds are pretty much just kind of running the gambit. To the surprise of everybody. Like it is kind of crazy to see that both the Dallas Fuel and the Hangzhou Spark with kind of impressive teams and again, Spark almost nearing like super team level. Look like they can barely win scrims. Like that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to figure out like you mentioned that
the kill positions.
Yeah, the kill positions for Spark. Whether or not I'll try to,
and I'm being very specific on that match alone. I can't speak for the Charge match. Probably the only two matches that you could like relatively get a good test on. But just in the head-to-head versus the Infernal, it felt like Monk and Linksa were perpetually dead because they had no space to work with, and even when they did get space, it was space they had no right having. Right, like there was a fight on Lijiang. I think it was Night Market. It was towards the end of the round versus the Infernal. Gusha is like jumping away. I think the supports are on point. They're holding the point. There's like a skirmish fighting in the courtyard. Gusha's jumping away from the supports to kind of hold like a corner on the high ground to try to do something there. And the Seoul Infernal on Zarya just run at the supports and kill them.
Right.
Like they have no clue what's going on half the time. And it is very odd to see in a meta that, again, whether or not APAC is drifting away from the Winston, hard to say. But it is bonkers to me. Maybe it's a bad day at the office. Doesn't seem like it's the case. That team is. Let's hope that was just a one-off because that was rough. I do wonder about them in knockouts, but I digress from my Spark hatred.
Yeah,
I'm sure Kenobi is frothing at the mouth because he did mention it was almost a little too good to be true.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not currently loading, and the stats you showed, Eric, are not the ones we were looking for in terms of FK3. You have to very specifically look for the match in player statistics in order to get there, but the query is not loading as quickly. So, and my phone's currently shitting itself. So,
yeah, that's the one thing about Winston's Lab. It runs through a lot of data, so your PC is gonna take a minute.
Yeah.
Do we want to quickly run through Preds and get the frick out of here?
Sure. Let's go.
All right, because there is some 3 Overwatch, so this probably won't be too quick. Loading in to May 19th, we have the Las Vegas Eternal against the Boston Uprising. This is 3-0, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, 3-0 Boston. It's not even close. I won't even give them a map. Vancouver, London. Oh, boy, do I love some green. Give me Vancouver, 3-1.
Yeah, you're high. 3-2 London.
3-2 London after they barely get it over the line versus Avalla.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. All right, bro.
Faith, Avalla, same thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually heresy, and I've debated about making a short about this. And if somebody wants to see this, I'll make it. Faith's okay. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this.
Absolutely insane. Yeah.
Faith is not only insane. I think he might be my favorite, and I'm very particular, and I use my favorite. I'm not gonna say the best because I haven't tested this yet, but he's my favorite. He's my favorite anti-Lucio. Does that make sense? I know this is getting like links or territory of fucking narrative analysis.
He's okay. So here's how I interpret what you just said. Okay. Lee Jae-gon plays Lucio for the joy of booping people off high grounds and like being an obnoxious little shit that creates offensive pressure. Faith plays to destroy other people's dreams of glory. He'll be there, boop off people. Omega Peel has crazy movement, but like also slippery as shit and like dies very infrequently.
You're not super far off base. In particular, I think you're on the right track, at least in my mind. There was a couple plays from the Boston-Vancouver matchup, and it's funny that you referenced Lee Jae-gon, because it happened to him. It's on the Oasis, and I think another map. I can't, for my life of me, remember exactly which one it was. Yeah, it's on University, and I think it's on City Center, I think. But there are a couple instances where, again, like you're talking about, Lee Jae-gon is being this like hyper aggressive Reddit Lucio, and Faith can be that, but he does it like he sets up his punch. Does that make sense? Like if you go back and you look at University, you immediately notice that Faith just boops off somebody off the map, right? The only way that happens is if he controls the side of the fight and he's able to latch onto the wall longer than Lee Jae-gon, right? And the way that he does this is he kind of like, and you kind of have to frame by frame this, he kind of skirts around the corner. He sees that Lee Jae-gon's coming in for the aggression. He goes higher than him. That's the key in both of these engagements. He raises the elevation, he boops him off the wall, and that sets up the boop off the map for him to get. Right? So Faith is setting up these boops. He's setting up these peels. There's another one on University where like Lee Jae-gon, like he goes to like duel him on the coast, and I think Faith like ducks away and then like comes back around. Even his like pathing is like intelligent. This kid is, again, underrated is an understatement. This kid is hard carrying some of these fights and is setting up his team for the utmost success. This kid's crazy.
Dude,
check it out.
Dude, like, do you remember this? I think I brought it up before here. This highlight of Lip on King's Row first, where Lip has a teleporter already set up top bridge, so to speak, and on A, and like the impressive thing is that Lip keeps shooting at Faith, and then teleports and gets him from behind by predicting where Faith would go. Now, if you go back to that action, the way he weaves and seamlessly transitions while flying through that window, and then backward skating, and then being surprised by Lip, who anticipates this because he's the best Sombra in the league and gaps hard. But everything about this is so smooth. If I did that in CSGO Surf, I'd get a warm, fuzzy feeling and would feel one with the map, okay? Like, this guy was schmoving, and Lip was just a nightmare that overcame him in the hallway. But the way he flies through the open little window and then immediately goes into the backwards grind is so satisfying. It just sucks for him that Lip is just big-brained.
It's... Lip is a demon, and it is comical to go back and listen to Roston praise, thank the heavens that Lip is left, because his team doesn't have to play him anymore. So shout out to the Infernal, who doesn't have to play Lip. I've got Vancouver. You've got London. We'll have to see. Somehow I think I'll be right. A game that it might be a little closer than we want to admit: the Valiant and the Toronto Defiant.
That's a... here's the bullshit, Joe. You want to hear some bullshit? I want to give this a 3-0. I really want to.
You should.
I really want to. And I absolutely totally would. But my client will not accept and pick him unless I give Valiant a map. I'm not kidding. Like, I demonstrated it yesterday in Discord.
I believe it. Yeah, you talked about it.
That unless I give Valiant a map, the save predictions button will not highlight. If I now go in and remove the map, it will stay gray. If I give it 2 maps, it will light up orange again. I am pogged out of my mind that I now am forced by this game to give them a map against Valiant. Now, I can either do Shock or Defiant. I will say both of them are 3-0s.
Yes.
But
I disagree.
I think both of those would be 3-0s, but because I'm forced by the law to give Valiant a...
because you're getting actively marketplaced, okay? They're helping you with your predictions because you can't be trusted.
These FEC guidelines are crazy. I have to say, if I had to predict where Valiant is more likely to get a map, it would be against Defiant. Therefore, my pred officially is 3-1. But in my heart of hearts, it's a 3-0.
See, I think your heart's just wrong. I think I align with the feeling
that's like my ex-wife
that it should be.
I don't have an ex-wife,
That's just the ultimate cope. Yeah. The ex-wife you don't have. Your future ex-wife. I agree that it should be in feeling. Roster on roster, the Toronto Defiant should mollywop the Valiant, and it should be a quick day at the office. However, that is not the world we live in currently, and the Toronto Defiant are a worse team than the Mayhem, right? Now, Joe, you're talking about the meta transfer and the late stage of meta change, and couldn't the Toronto Defiant be good at this meta? Maybe. We haven't seen them play since week 3, and week 3 is my determinant of okay, this is the line in the sand. This is where I think, the meta has deviated, and maybe the Defiant are coming back with some wings under them. I don't trust this team. Another team, coincidentally, having to go to Game 5 versus New York, a team that I think we're all pretty clearly putting at the bottom. Not so good, right? Going to Game 5, struggling to put them away, not something that builds confidence in me. A Valiant coming off of a near miss with the Mayhem, going to Game 5, ultimately losing. I'll give them a map. I think they are good enough for a map. I think Toronto is... There's questions to be left, there's questions for me to see answered, and I think this is going to be the game to see them answered. Does this meta deviation help them or hurt them? Is there more to this than maybe we're necessarily letting on. I know that their content team has been, producing source code for a couple of years. I caught the latest episode. There's some comments in there that I was very intrigued by, let's say. We will have to see what that looks like. Some that I think you've kind of hinted at as well. Yeah, I think Valiant are probably good for 1, maybe 2. We're going to have to see what Toronto shows up on the day, because what I've seen thus far is not what I was hoping for, because it's been rough. It's been rough.
Eric,
not bad, just rough.
Eric, you're also getting, peer pressure marketplace. You also got to give Valiant 1. Lock it in.
I won't say for me.
No! He only gets 3 O's. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay.
All right, we're moving on. Vegas Glads, 3 Overwatch. Yeah.
Yep.
Glads weps him up. I hate to say this is another 3 Overwatch, but the Houston
it
Outlaws and the Shock, that's 3 Overwatch.
Now,
Houston wins.
Joe, this is also the game where Outlaws goes 2-0 up.
No, stop it.
Shock brings it back to a 2-2, and then Shock loses it on third.
I don't know. I think on my pick'ems, I didn't give him a map.
Yeah, but I almost kind of expect Shock to have their best performance in recent times against the Outlaws.
I mean, yeah, it would be very fitting for them to just like play up to their opponent. I know that that's going to be like an immediate narrative if that does happen. Like, oh yeah, we didn't care so much of it. Like, that's the level. Like, if that's the level of copium that we're at, then yeah, maybe I'll just hop on the Twitter bandwagon and be like, oh well, Proper didn't have his seat warmer at the right temperature, and the room was too moist. Like, come on, guys, stop. If they do, great. I'll judge that when I see it. Sure. From the performance that I've seen, the tank line's woeful. The support line is absent, to say the least, and this is the Proper show. Go back, even the macro, which is crazy to say, but it may be a little bit explainable if you're gonna point to a meta deviation. Bro, I didn't like fucking Sombra May when the Mayhem ran it in GOATs, okay? I don't know why Krusty's crackpipe has told him to play May Sombra, but it's clearly not working. Please stop it.
Yeah.
Put Proper on Sojourn or Tracer and just let him carry you to maybe a map win. That's the only way that I see them winning a map, is if literally the best player in the game currently lifts them over the line, kicking and screaming, 1v10.
Yep.
Maybe then you get a map.
All right. Boston defined.
Boston in 3-1.
Okay. I don't hate that. I think
I might even say 3-0.
Yeah.
Depending on what Toronto shows up.
Yeah, I think 3-1 is probably most likely. Okay.
Yeah, I would say so.
Glads Titans.
Glads Titans. I'm going to say 3-2 Glads. I'm not that delusional. I'd be selling you wolf tickets if I said that the Glads were bad. I think they are pretty good. I think their meta interpretation probably does fit. We're seeing more hit scan. We're seeing the success of the hit scan. That said, I think people are going to wake up to the idea that the Vancouver Titans are actually a mid-table team. So I think they are going to take it to Glads.
Have you sacrificed a goat yet and used its blood to
for a voodoo? See, that's the magic of not having scrimbux. I get to just, I get to earn this for me. I made a read. Was it a gamble? You bet your sweet ass it was. Is it paying off? So far, so good. I'm not gonna Wall Street's bet this because it looks good now. I don't have diamond hands. If this shit goes off the rails, I'm not gonna chill for a team that's just poop. This team's just good,
dude. Like it's like okay, right. So the Shocker shit this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Dallas is not an NA. Okay.
Yeah.
But Valiant is. What?
True.
Okay. London is also not doing as well. NYXL is not either. We have a very clear certification. Okay, that's believable. Now the Vancouver Titans beat the San Francisco Shock. At some point, maybe there's witchcraft involved. Maybe you're guilty. Maybe the glove does indeed fit. Okay. You fucking demon.
Yeah. I'm the demon. I like to think that I'm climbing the karmic ladder. In my previous life, I just earned this through
what did
good
you do?
deeds.
Yeah, okay. What did
I
you
don't
do
know. It's not up for me to decide. That's for my past life to have written.
okay.
That's not
What
my
do you think
that's
it would
not
be?
my doing.
What
Huh?
would you have been in your last life?
A great dog. Do I give like great leader energy? Am I a great warrior that help conquer nations and provide for his people? No,
Dude,
I'm a good lap dog, okay?
Eric, I bet Joe was like a if you get this, you're educated. It was the first dog in space. That
Yeah.
that was shot up that never had a return plan made for him. Because
There's a couple animals like that, right?
Anything less noble wouldn't deserve the type of luck you're experiencing. Okay. This Lord Ben is under some fucking voodoo shit. The other alternative is that I don't know, like I drowned a litter of puppies in a past life or something. Like I
a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Something is converging here. It's crazy.
It is a little bit of a convergence, I will say. It is prime time narrative hours. I'm just saying, Overwatch League. Let's get the Lord Bet rolling. I know Punk's dad's in on this. Let's keep it going. Hashtag Lord Bet on Twitter. Let the people know where you got to see this.
London, you got to throw me one.
Top tier content,
dude. London, you got to throw me one. Hardy, I was very
close.
Yeah,
they're certainly gonna throw you one.
Please, one time, Chris. No. One time. Like
no,
I
they
need
get it on
one.
Shambali. They get it when they can play Rush, and then they lose.
I need an unexpected one. Okay, like you got an unexpected one in the shock one. That wasn't calculated. Give me the London one. Okay, that would be comic justice. Bring the universe in balance once again.
I don't know about that one, but yes, I have the Glads winning. I think it'll be close. I think people are gonna wake up to the idea that they're gonna buy into the church. They're gonna buy into the Titans a little bit. I think they're cooking. So Glads ultimately wins though. London, Houston, 3 Overwatch, Houston. Yeah.
Yes. Because London already blew their load against Titans, of course.
Yeah, they counter-stratted just for you to set the universe right. If they don't win.
That's the one thing you have to do all season. Just peek here. After that, like a salmon.
He's just gonna use you and abuse you. He's gonna throw you back in the river.
Like a salmon after juicing off, you can just fucking die as long as you do that for me. Okay?
Oh, how shameful of you. How dare you?
Okay.
We've got the Valiant, we've got the Shock. An unexpected toilet bowl, but a toilet bowl nonetheless.
Come on, this is 3-0. I don't
know, man. I really don't know. I think it's probably 3-1, but at this point, I don't know. If you can't put away NYXL, I think they're better than Valiant, but it's gonna take a beating, bro. Seeker is going to take a map off of proper. Let that simmer.
That's the reason why I don't think this will happen, is because the reason why Valiant makes it close is because of Seeker. And I think like if you're trying to just like deadlift against each other, I just think like most of the time proper will just wear you as a sock puppet.
I mean, sure, but they were losing maps to Fitz on support, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
That ain't good. That's not a good look. I think Valiant's good for one, and I think that's where we're at. Maybe that changes versus Houston if they show up and they look gangbusters. Maybe it's a 3-0. I don't know, but until I see a beating heart out of this team, it's DOA. It's a case, and they're catching it all right. All right. We have been here far too long.
Yep.
Episode 296 is wrapping up. It is fizzing down. Is that a reference to the thumbnail? Maybe. I don't know. You have to figure that out for yourself. What's coming up? You're going to MSI, yeah?
Yeah. I'm leaving Friday morning to watch some League of Legends, professional League of Legends in London. Which should be sweet. Looking forward to once again getting new impressions on how other esports operate. And yeah, we'll report back what the differences are. I'm sure like the production quality will be incredible. Of course, like it's a little disingenuous in the sense that like I'm only going there during the finals days, which are likely to have the highest production because that's when the biggest arenas are being chosen. But theoretically, like this should be a good measurement stick to, hold against our mid-season invitational. Not that I expect ours to be as big as MSI, realistically, but it's good to compare notes, look at ideas that are being implemented in the way it's presented, maybe even what kind of opportunities are there, and also what kind of people are around, right? Like, I'm always super interested by longer living scenes because there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of great just experience going around of folks that also just are interestingly generally interested in esports at large and in its continued success, that all have at least ancillary knowledge or proxy knowledge of other esports. They're always like also looking a little bit past the confines of their own scene. And it's always really interesting to have meta discussions on esports winter. How should esports be promoted? What values are there? What things can one learn from the other? Like, for instance, currently, like I'm workshopping an article, and I probably will ask that at League and then at the League MSI, and then we'll bring it out soonish after, is the correlation between rate of change and severity of changes to career longevity. Okay, so notoriously our careers are shorter than in other esports. I think a large part of that is rate of change and how often the game changes to a degree that it does no longer facilitate the specific skills that people either have grinded up for or have been selected towards. And the biggest difference being, like, for instance, like we practically switch genres between GOATs and regular season play, right? A lot of those guys have transitional properties in their play. But very, very often, like, careers of high-profile players are just cut short by the meta switching in a particular way, therefore giving them an inopportune situation. So, like, as that volatility is introduced into other scenes, for instance, CS with CS2, maybe we will see some shakeups there. And also, for instance, Dota had massive changes. How does it work in terms of the filtering process or how careers, like, can you see more retirements after bigger changes? Is that a social component, or is that actually a component of performance declining as new sort of selective pressures are put on pro players? Is the rate of change filtering for people that can work longer hours rather than like stack up knowledge that eventually helps them figure out situations that are less well known how to solve for younger or less experienced professionals? I'm looking at all of those things, and eventually I'll just compress it into one article. But that's while there won't be scientific data, there will be feedback from professional players of all those scenes, and they really unpromptedly come up with a theory that rate of change is a huge part of volatility, with other, like, for instance, league play into tournament play or vice versa being the other big component of volatility, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's only kind of providing evidence for some stuff that I think you've been kind of like banging the drum on for a long time, that, at the speed at which this game fundamentally changes and the sandbox that we've been given for such a long time, Not only does the sandbox demand a whole hell of a lot of its players, but changing what sand we're playing with on a near constant monthly basis makes it so that you're really burning out of sand architects to play within the metaphor. So
Sure.
yeah, no, that is pretty fascinating to hear some professionals outside of the space kind of reflect and kind of give some pretty insightful analysis on what kind of creates a lasting product for the performers, right? We get to see them every day perform, but what really goes on behind the scenes? How can you really kind of keep up on things and try to keep your big bunny ears for the audio listeners, but health as high as it can be? Your career health, if that makes more sense.
Sure.
Another thing that I will celebrate you for is I think you definitely I think it's always interesting to hear the I think the age old motto or mantra rather of seeing your own, seeing either maybe yourself or something through the lens of another aspect, right? Like appreciating or depreciating a little bit on Overwatch from experiencing the Dota major or from MSI. That's always something that I think you can do with, I think, in life, really. Like just trying to unpack strategies or macro or whatever. Like there's so many bits and pieces of other esports that just find homes everywhere, right? There are like universal truths to a lot of these games, funnily enough. They're pretty general, but they certainly help you apply things. So for anybody who's new, maybe to Overwatch, I know we kind of talked about like localization and how that may, have attracted a certain particular audience. I would definitely, if you want to get better at understanding Overwatch or anything in general, really, try to see it from a different angle or try to see how the neighbors play their game, right? It definitely makes for some interesting reflection on your own space. Anything else coming down the pipeline?
There's a bunch of content pieces that are sort of like more in the general esports space, sort of interpreting what kind of learnings there are. Considering like I'm much more comfortable in Overwatch, I think there will always be a slant that could be interesting to other folks. Maybe it's also the time during which like a lot of those who have been attracted by the sports business models and find out, that the esports thing is actually really scratching my competitive itch. Let's see what other games are out there. Maybe could help inform, because I think, like, generally speaking, folks like to align with others of, a similar maturity, a similar view on things. There were some things about the Dota crowd that I found very admirable, and that vibed with me way more. And to have these insights is always rather interesting, because I think if you can enjoy one core competitive experience and then also enjoy the game, then esports always can be a thing for you in all other games. For me, usually it breaks down at the game level, not necessarily too much at the community, because generally speaking, you can create your own around it, right? There's always some lunatics that vibe more with you, but also still enjoy the game. So that's never really a prohibitive aspect.
No, I think that's something that I've definitely honed in on when it comes to content creation. Is like, as long as you have like an idea of who you are, not in the vapid sense, but like really deep down, and you align your content with that idea of who you are, I think you'll find your people eventually. It'll take some time, but you'll find who you're writing for, you're making videos for, or you're creating podcasts for. I think you'll find your people. And yeah, some interviews coming for me. Some stuff happening. Yes, I think if you read between the lines, I think I said it earlier. We're coming back tomorrow to record another show about the lovely PvE topic. And we will also be doing APAC preds, hopefully. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in those. That being said, we're already 2 hours deep. So episode 296 is in the books. We love you. We'll see you next week. Adios.
Peace.